no matter what
Yeah.
situation you are in, when you have these skills, this mindset, you can make things work.
The practice manager cannot be all things to all people at all times with no boundaries and no respect for the fact that they're human.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. I'm excited to introduce our guest, Rhonda Bell. I had seen her name as a speaker at several conferences I have attended this year, and I finally got to hear her speak at AVMA. Little did I know how amazing her story is and the amazing things she is working on. Rhonda has never let challenges get in her way, but there was one instance where she thought it might. It ended up paving an unexpected but rewarding career path. I think you'll be inspired in many ways. But briefly, Rhonda went from certified veterinary assistant to certified veterinary practice manager, and now runs her own company supporting veterinary organizations of all sizes pave unique paths in veterinary medicine. And at the end, you'll be able to see some exciting things that she and a couple of other previous guests on Vet Life Reimagined are working on right now, making a huge difference in veterinary medicine, and a special opportunity for Fetch in Kansas City in August. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Rhonda Bell. When did you know that you were even interested in veterinary medicine?
Oh, man, a long, long time ago. It was honestly, and I feel like Sophia from the Golden Girls, like, this lady, 18, whatever. No, it was more like 1995. And I was working in a nursing home with humans. And I knew that that wasn't the right fit for me. I love the care. I love the science. I love the nursing care part of it. But I hated some of the dynamics, some of the horrible things that I saw, some of the neglect, some of the mistreatment, some of the I just knew that I wasn't in the right place and I wouldn't be able to sustain something successfully throughout my whole work life. And I was a young mom, a young person, and a young woman trying to figure out who I was going to be. I didn't really have a big picture of who that was. So I was trying different things. And I thought nursing was going to be that path. And I realized it wasn't. So the very next thing that I tried, there was a local vet in my town that was hiring for a technician. And Texas, everybody's a technician. And so I applied, and I didn't really think that I would get the job, except that my dad was friends with the veterinarian. So that might have had something to do with it because my dad was, involved in things in the city, that sort of stuff. So it could have been a mercy hire. I don't. And so that's whenever I got there and I saw it, and I still had the nursing care, the health care, the nurturing, the compassion for the animals and for the people. And that's when those dots connected. Unfortunately for me, as soon as I got there, this was like probably the end of 95. Then I found out that I was actually pregnant with my first son. And so I was struggling. Finally get my job, finally realized like the light bulb comes on, this is it, and then get pregnant. And so I ended up having to quit that and, do the kid thing for a while. We already had an older stepdaughter at home who had special needs. And so we were dealing with some of that. And so I just knew that I'm like, I'm coming back. I will get back to this. I'm just going to hit the pause button right now. So yeah. So way back then I knew.
And so how were you able to get back into vet med?
So after my last son, Matthew, was in kindergarten full time, I went back to school. And so I applied for a grant. My husband's a retired Marine, so we were military, moved around everywhere. And I applied for an educational grant to go to a veterinary assistant training program in San Diego, California. And I got the grant and I couldn't believe it. And so I had the interview and all that stuff, but I got the grant and got into that training program. And whenever I actually was taught the medicine, the technique, the skills, it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. I don't remember where I fell in the class in terms of grade point average, but I was pretty high because I was just motivated. It was the first time in my life I'd ever wanted to study, like wanted to. You couldn't give me enough information about it because it was just fascinating to me. Absolutely incredible how things worked. So, and I did really well, which is the other thing. In school, I didn't necessarily struggle. I was kind of middle of the road in high school, made decent grades. I wasn't going to be, top graduate or anything like that, but it was, I was decent. And so whenever I did really well in this program, I was like, man, and it was easy. Like that was the thing. I was like, why are people struggling with this stuff? This is amazing. So got that under my belt. And then during that, you have to do an internship in a practice. And so I got a little job working in a vet clinic and kind of applying what I had going. And so meanwhile, kids are going to school full time. So I'm having to do all this around kids because husband's also deployed. So that was the trick. So I was also working on my business degree at that time, at the same time. So when the kids got home from school in the afternoons, I would get home from work in the afternoons or school, and we would do homework together. So I'm working on my college degree. They're working on their second grade homework and kindergarten coloring pages and like that. So we all sat together, me and my 3 kids, and we went to school together. And so my children got to see me going through college and fighting and continuing and not stopping no matter what came up. I mean, my husband did 2 tours in Iraq and 2 tours in Afghanistan while I was doing all of this stuff. So it was just kind of you just keep going one day at a time. Wake up, do your thing, go to bed, wake up, do your thing. So got into that clinic. And whenever I graduated from college with my business degree as well, the practice owner found out because I hadn't really mentioned it. I mean, I was just doing it at home. And she's like, "You have a business degree?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I love business. I grew up, parents were business owners. Like, I grew up to be an entrepreneur. I was not raised to be an employee. I'm not a very good one. I have too many opinions and I'm not bossy. I have leadership skills." So the practice owner, she's like, "Girl, okay, you're now my manager." And that was literally my introduction into practice management. Was they just happened to find out and off I went. So then I realized, like, wait, there's business and veterinary medicine. Like, I can do both of those things. Oh my God. Like, wow. And so I started looking into, I'm like, well, what is there for practice managers? Like, what's the deal? Because at that point I was making $9 an hour as the practice manager. So definitely not going to retire. Definitely can't feed the kids on my own if anything happened to my husband. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a little bit more because the struggle is real. A few times where we were eating ramen out of coffee pots. I don't know if you can do that. Put your ramen soup in your coffee pot and run the coffee maker, and you've got boiling water making soup. So literally have done stuff like that in survival mode. So going throughout my time with that particular practice, I learned that there's a CVPM program and that you can actually get a certification and expand your knowledge and your skills, specifically in veterinary practice management. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the next goal. Let's do that one. So I immediately set that goal and started working towards that. And one of the requirements is that you have to be in practice, a practice for 3 years. Well, going back to my husband being military, we got orders every 24 months. And so it was like, well, crap, how do I do that? So it was really hard. And I had to keep postponing because I had the college, I had everything else. I just didn't have the time and the seat in a particular practice. And so finally we got stationed north of San Diego in Oceanside, and I applied for a job after we'd come back. We'd already been to Arizona and back. And I was trying to get it in Arizona as well. And I wasn't there long enough. So came back to California and got a job. And my husband said, "I'm going to be working in San Diego. You get a job. And no matter what, hell or high water, we're going to make sure that you stay in a practice for 3 years." And I'm like, okay. And we did. So we split the difference. We lived in Oceanside. He drove 45 minutes. I drove 45 minutes north. And I got into my dream practice, which actually was 2 practices. And the owners there were phenomenal, amazing, amazing people. They had their warts. I'm not going to say they were perfect because they certainly weren't, but they were amazing, amazing men who were dedicated to their practice and to their people. And they supported me. And so they said, absolutely, you're doing it. They bought me the entire library of the recommended reading for the CVPM exam. And it became part of the practice library because they supported it and believed it that much. So 3 years goes by, I apply, I finally qualify. I sit down, I take the test, and I pass. And that night they took me out to dinner and handed me a check. And they had already written it because they knew I was going to pass. And they gave me a bonus. So that was my trail all the way from just walking in the door of a veterinary clinic and realizing, wait, oh my gosh, this is a thing. Like there's something here, all the way to now I'm a CVPM. And then, of course, my plot has to pivot and twist because, of course, I go and get sick. So it's kind of like, finally get there. It's like one of those Lifetime movies that, just doesn't stop.
Yes. Although, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how we seem to find happiness actually stronger and we learn a lot more when we go through the harder times. And these were like scientists talking about this. So I'm like, there is something to be said of, going through some trials, even though they're definitely not fun in the moment. I did want to go back just a little bit to let people understand all the different possibilities within the veterinary profession. And you said you really had a heart for entrepreneurship and business. And then you were also trying these like healthcare areas as well. So when you were thinking about business, and it wasn't until a little bit later that you realized, oh, I can combine them. What were you thinking at that time? Were you thinking about doing like a side business and then still staying in pet healthcare? Or what were you thinking until you finally got oh, wait, I can marry these two?
Yeah. I mean, well, I've always been a huge fan of the side hustle. Even as a young mom, I was always looking for other ways. So we were stationed in Okinawa as an example. We were stationed in Okinawa for less than 3 years, so right about 3 years. And I didn't work over there because I didn't have the right visas and requirement to work over there. Other than I was allowed to teach cultural English to the locals. And so I basically kind of put the word out that I was willing to teach conversational English to the Okinawan locals. It kind of evolved, and I did that for the whole time I was there. And so that was my side hustle money. That was my little side gig. It turned into Okinawans wanted to send their children to us to have them immersed with my kids and with other kids, or we would cook meals together because they wanted to know how to make American lasagna, or, just things that we take so much for granted, but they were totally engaged in learning our culture and embracing of our culture. And then they would bring stuff to us and, like sushi and weird things that we were like, I'm not eating that octopus. It was literally swimming a few minutes ago. No. But other things where it was just like, oh yeah, it was like crawling off the plate. Like, I'm not doing that. Anyway, culture, people, it's culture. So yeah, I mean, I always had a side hustle. I always had something going because my mind is always so busy and I'm always looking for ways of growing. Like right now, I'm teaching canning classes on the side of running my consulting business because people want to know how to can and I know how to do that. So it's always been a mindset that I've had, is just to be entrepreneurial and help people. Like my friends know to come to me because I'm like, let me see how I can monetize you. Let me see how we can turn whatever your passion is into revenue. And it's not even something that I plan or think about. It just happens. It's an illness.
I don't know if I'd call it an illness. I think that's good skills to have because, as we're about to go into, you never know what's going to happen. So it sounds like also watching your parents, you realize that having these types of skills and this type of thinking was really beneficial. And maybe you didn't think about it entirely early on, but you saw how transferable that it was to no matter what situation you're in. When you have these skills, this mindset, you can make things work. And I think that's really valuable. And I think it's something that in the veterinary industry, if we stop and appreciate that those skills are extremely valuable in what we do, we work with multiple species. We don't always have all the resources we would love to have. We have to be able to have that mindset. Again, also all the other things that come into being in the veterinary industry. Yes, there's the medical aspect of it, but there's a lot of other things that go into running a veterinary practice. So it's something that I am constantly working on as well, because I also have lots of ideas always flowing and multiple interests that I have as well. And being able to partner that also with helping others, like bringing other people along with you, all the more joy and benefit, I think, in the end.
Yeah, my mom was able to, and I didn't realize what was happening. Like you said, you made me think I didn't realize at the time when my parents were business owners, I didn't appreciate everything because there were times where they just could not be at the soccer game or couldn't be at the volleyball game because they were working. They had a business to run. It wasn't like they could just ask their boss to take the time off. And as a child, I didn't always appreciate that discipline or that commitment because it was like, well, what about me? Well, fast forward, their example of resiliency and discipline really helped me get through the hard things that I was going to have to face in my career because it taught me you're going to get up tomorrow and you're going to take one step and then you're going to take the next step. And that's all my parents really did was continue to take the step. They had a goal, they had a vision, and they just continued working towards it. And they're now both retired and living nearby. And, I get to spend time with them. And now I'm in that position of I am the business owner. I am the one that has to be disciplined. I am the one that has to be resilient. And having that as an example and seeing people, like I watched somebody do it. Like I know how to do it because they showed me. And my mom in particular, she showed me how to be a woman in business. There was a time where they opened a laser tag arena, which is so not my parents. If you know my parents, they're so straight laced, Southern Baptist, just really kind of strict, toe the line. And all of a sudden, my mom's like, I'm going to open a family entertainment center. And we're going, okay. And I was probably in high school when this happened. And they did. I mean, my mom said, we're doing it. And they did. All the while, my dad still owned the auto parts store. So they owned two businesses working and doing an entertainment business where it was like they rented out an old movie theater and built laser tag arenas and sold pizzas and birthday parties. And it was a blast. And all my nieces and nephews have been able to go. They have memories of going there and being able to do that stuff. And that was my mom. My mom was the driving force behind that. And the thing that she did is she let me see her go through the process of starting that business. Like I did with my kids, them watching me go through college. I watched her launch this business. I didn't realize what I was seeing, but she didn't hide anything. She didn't do it in an office behind closed doors. She did it in the living room on a coffee table. So she paved that way for me or showed me that path. And my mom's just one tough little cookie. And so if I can be even just a little bit like her in terms of just being a strong woman, forging a path and helping others forge a path, I'm all in. That's what I want to do.
And along with like watching your parents be very, very hard workers and not always being able to come to games, getting to that point where you find out you're going to get sick, you also put forth a lot of energy into work as well. And so I'm trying to decide, do I let you tell the story first and then come back? But I kind of want to stay. And when you finally get your certification, you've got this pay raise, things are going well. You're also working really hard. So what did you feel like was driving you? I mean, some of it could just be, I'm excited, I'm passionate, I love what I'm doing, and I'm just working really hard. But can you think back to maybe building up to that pivotal moment where you were kind of starting to develop some of these habits and things within the work environment, leading these two hospitals?
Yeah, I was really dumb. So at that point, getting that CBPM was incredible. But then I immediately put this pressure on myself of proving that I deserved it and proving that I could back it up. So 8, 10, 12 hours a day on the floor. I'm teching, I am managing, I am all things to all people. I am answering my phone at 3 a.m. whenever somebody decides that that's the moment that they're going to call out sick. And I didn't realize going forward how terrified of my cell phone I actually was until I didn't have to answer to that cell phone anymore. I didn't realize that I would get a knot in the pit of my stomach anytime my phone made a noise. I was literally afraid of it. And I just didn't know because I'm like, oh crap, now what? And that was literally the response I had to it. Could be my mom calling. It could have been my grandma calling, but it was like, oh my God. And I just didn't realize how much all of those things were really impacting me because I wasn't managing it and I wasn't setting there were no boundaries, none. So that was a huge mistake that I made that led to where I had to make these massive changes. And it wasn't by choice. I was forced to make these massive changes. because I was not equipped, educated, smart enough, knowledgeable, whatever the word is, to know that boundaries were crucial. And I had practice owners who didn't understand it either. They didn't know that they needed to sustain me and my career and not put the expectations on me that, she's going to be all things because that's her role and that's what we want, or that anybody's capable. It's not just a Rhonda thing. The practice manager cannot be all things to all people at all times with no boundaries and no respect for the fact that they're human. Like, you literally cannot do that. The practice owner can't do it. That's why they need practice managers. So turning around and shifting all of that responsibility onto one person, it's not sustainable, and it will literally kill people. It almost killed me.
Right. And thank you for going into it, because I want to acknowledge that there is, I fear, a little bit of culture around this, that we feel like we have to do this, like we're not supposed to have boundaries. And I've actually interviewed a veterinarian who she ended up hiring her husband to be her practice manager because she went through so many practice managers who would not set boundaries and they were making themselves sick. And so she was just kind of like, I don't like watching people do this to themselves. Like, I don't know how to turn this out. So she brought in her husband, who was non-veterinary person and knew how to set boundaries. So I want to emphasize that this is something that we have to work on and sometimes have to talk to ourselves about this. Yes, I maybe feel like this is a cultural thing, but in the long run, this does not help me. It does not help anybody else. And sometimes we have to either hit rock bottom or be forced to do things. And that is, like you said, kind of what happened. So do you mind sharing your pivotal moment story?
Oh, yeah, sure. I am extremely transparent. And so I think that there's a lot of lessons that we can teach each other and share. So I have no problem telling people the good and the bad. I mean, I admit that I made a lot of bad decisions. I did a lot of really good things also. And so I'm proud of myself on those fronts, but I'm also very open about if I can help at least shine a light on some of the behaviors that potentially were toxic and that did ultimately hurt me, then I'm all in and I'm there for that. And so going back, this was 2016. I actually don't remember specifically. I'd have to go back and pull all my medical records to find out the date. I was a little busy, so I just didn't connect it. But it was a morning, and I was supposed to go to a business breakfast, and we were going to have a business meeting before work. And so I was getting ready for that. And it was supposed to be a little bit earlier day than what I'm used to, but not much, like maybe an hour. And then we were going to go work in a little bit late. And I was going to meet the two practice owners, and we were going to have breakfast and talk about stuff. I don't even remember what it was about. And so I knew it was something important. I remember that it was because we were going to meet somewhere else. We weren't going to meet in the office, because anytime we're in the office and everybody's listening, like super, then all the staff members have supersonic hearing at that point. So I'm late and I didn't realize it. My boss called and was checking on me. And I was like, why is he calling? Like, I didn't understand why he was calling me, because I'm never late. I didn't realize that I was late for this breakfast. And it was just random that he called. Like, it really threw me off. And so I was like, I'll be there in a minute. I'm almost done. And he's like, where are you at? And I was like, dude, I'm at home. I'm getting dressed. I'll be there. Like, get off my butt, And in my mind, this is all clicking. Like, this is all working. And I'm communicating. And so he's like, no, exactly, where are you? And I remember this part because it was like so weird to me that he was wanting such specifics. I'm like, are you turning into a creeper? Like, what's happening right now? Like, this is not, I don't understand. And so I said, I'm in my room, getting dressed, putting on my pants. Like, I was literally getting sarcastic at that point. Or so I thought. And so he's like, okay. And so he hung up and I was like, okay, that was really strange. And I remember going into the bathroom and, I had this room and you just kind of go in this bathroom around the corner. And I remember looking down at my hands and my hands were like this blue color. And I was going, oh, that is so bizarre. Like, why? And it wasn't cold. I was in Southern California, so it wasn't like super cold, but my hands were kind of like a blue purple. And I was like, and I remember thinking that was weird. And then all of a sudden, my boss walks into my bedroom and I was like, oh my God, like crap just got really weird. Like, what's happening right now? And he said, hey, we're going to go. I'm going to take you to the hospital. And what I didn't realize is that I wasn't getting enough oxygen and I was slurring my speech. I didn't sound normal to him and he recognized it on the phone, like just instantly. The things that I thought I was communicating, those were not the things I was saying. He said it was gibberish, that he couldn't understand me. He couldn't really get a fix on what I was trying to communicate to him. But in my mind, it was extremely clear. I mean, he was just being a weirdo when I was calling him out. So he took me to the ER and got me there within a few minutes. Thankfully, I lived right around, not too far, a few blocks away from it in California. And got there in time to find out that I was actually having a heart attack and didn't know. I didn't recognize it. I knew that I had pain between my shoulders, which I didn't know that women have different heart attacks than men. It wasn't something that I really understood. And for me, it was between my shoulder blade. And I just felt like I had to burp really bad. And it was painful, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't deal with. It was just kind of like a discomfort. We work with discomfort all the time. So yeah, I was having a heart attack and my boss broke into my house, drove me to the ER and saved my life that day. And he stayed with me in the ER. I remember he did some really funny things because I remember the crash cart coming in. There's chunks that are missing, but then there's chunks that are there in terms of my memory. I remember them wheeling in the crash cart and looking at the crash cart going, that's a really awesome setup. Like we kind of need that in our system. I remember thinking like I'm shopping through the ER of all the cool ideas that they have and how we could relate it to the practice. And then I asked them like, what are they doing? Because they put this pill under my tongue and I was like, okay, I don't even understand what's going on with that. And it tasted really bad. It made me feel really funny. And it was the nitro that they put under there to kind of help with the whole heart attack thing. And my boss said, he goes, you're having a heart attack right now, but you're going to be fine. And they brought the crash cart in right next to me just in case they needed it. And I just didn't understand what was happening. But he stayed with me through my cardiac ultrasounds. He stayed with me until my husband got there and even after that. And then he came and visited me every day. But if I didn't have that kind of intervention that morning, I don't know what would have happened. That whole event was very eye-opening, which started the trail to discover that I had an autoimmune disease called scleroderma. And that is ultimately terminal. So that heart attack is going to get me. It's just going to take a really long time. The scleroderma is a connective tissue disease that attacks either with some people attack the external, so the skin. So the skin turns hard and your skin is a living, breathing thing. And if it's hard and can't expand, it can't breathe, it can't function, it starts to get ulcerated, it starts to tear apart from your body. There's the other version where all of that is happening on the inside, and that's the one that I have. And so it's actually attacking my lungs in particular, but also my esophagus. So I have a hard time swallowing, a little bit of paralysis happening in there, but my lungs are not expanding fully as they once were. So I've already lost 50% lung function. I'm on a lot of medications to try to prevent further damage, but you can't fix it. There's no cure for scleroderma. So it's management, and it's just kind of paying attention, behaving as much as you can. My specialist at the time said, you're going to be sick full time. This is your new job. And I was like, I don't want that one. So that's not going to work for me. And they said, well, if you do work or if you do things, just avoid people and avoid pets. And it was like, crap. Like, do you know what I do for a living? And they said, you don't do that anymore. So that's how I had to pivot and rethink who I was going to be. My identity was tied up in being the practice manager and being in veterinary medicine. Like, it wasn't a job. That was who I was. And without that, who am I? And so I had a real moment of, I had one of my best girlfriends, Andrea, come over and I was crying to her and I'm like, I've lost everything. I've lost my career. I've lost who I am. And she's like, I'm going to give you a day. You can have this pity party for a day, but then tomorrow I want to know then what. And so that's kind of been our motto in our group of friends. It's like, yeah, that sucks. Now what? Now what? What's next? So what are you going to do? So yeah, it was definitely a sucky time, but I don't know that I would have gotten to where I'm at now if that stuff hadn't happened. And the ability I have now to influence people and help people the way that I do. So kind of a little bit grateful.
And what you do is amazing. I'm also really glad that you had a lot of supportive people around you. One, the practice owner who was able to tell something was off and get you the help. The friends who also do a little bit of the tough love. They're right. I think it's okay to mourn a little bit, but then it's time to go, okay, now what?
Now what?
It doesn't always hit us all at once, and all of a sudden we all of a sudden realize it, because I remember you were saying that, you were asking your husband to sneak in your laptop so you can do payroll while you're recovering in the hospital. And so it still takes time, because what we wrap our identity around that's huge. And so it takes time to kind of figure out, what are my values? What person do I really want to be? And so since that, that does take some time, what your thought process that got to you to a place more like today, where you are, as far as I can tell, you seem to be enjoying and finding the passion and the causes that are, worth fighting for. So what was kind of your thought process and journey to get to that point?
Well, yeah, I did. You reminded me of during payroll. It was not that switch moment where it's like, oh, now I know all things and I'm wise and I'm this. No, not at all. I'm very stubborn. I really wanted to hold on to a lot of those bad, toxic behaviors that got me in that position, because I hadn't identified cause and effect yet. Like, I hadn't really put it all together. And so, yeah, I had Jay sneak a laptop in because I needed to do payroll. And I was in the ICU, the cardiac ICU, trying to recover. And the nurses came in and they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I got to get payroll done. Nobody else can do payroll. And I've got to get my team paid. Like, it's not their fault that I, took time off to have a heart attack. So they've got to have money. And they were just like shaking their heads. And I was kind of like, I was a little judgy, So putting it back together, I'm like, oh man, no, it was stupid. Like, that was really dumb. My owners never asked me to do that. Like, they never said, we need you to do payroll, and will you, take a few minutes out of your recovery in the ICU to do that? That was me. Like, I made those choices and those decisions to get myself and to keep myself in that bad space, that negative space that was just not serving me. So I had a long recovery ahead of me, and I had to go home, and I couldn't walk. So my husband was literally lifting me, putting me on the toilet, dressing me, showering me, like the whole thing. My mom had to come out and stay with me for a few weeks for when he was at work, and because life had to go on. And I wasn't working. He had to work. Like, I was half the household income, and we were going to have drama really quick. And so mom's out and she's caring for me. And I just knew that there had to be something else. So I was working on regaining my strength, being able to walk again and not be dizzy and not fall over. And meanwhile, what does this new career look like? What does this new life look like? Because I am not a good do nothing person. Like, things will get really dark and nobody will like to be around me. So I've got to figure this out. So within, I don't know, maybe a month or two, again, the timeline is a little blurry to me because it just all runs together with doctor's appointments and everything else we were doing. But I asked my husband, I said, hey, can you bring me that laptop again? Laptop's dangerous. And he's like, yeah, why? And I was in my room and I said, I need help. I need to go sit at this desk over here because I didn't want to be in my bed doing it. And I remember I needed to sit at a desk because that's what business people do. And I sat there and I filed for my LLC because I was like, okay, I've got to have a job that I can't lose, that no matter what happens, nobody can take this away from me, that I have to carve a space for myself because I'm such a weird duck now that traditional employment's not going to work. So I formed my LLC and started my consulting business. And at first I looked at, where's the hole in veterinary medicine? Like, what are the things that I was bad at that I didn't have time for? And that's when I discovered it was like, it's the marketing and the social media. I just didn't have time for it. I was running 2 hospitals. There were too many other fires and marketing was the bottom of the list. And I love promoting businesses. I have a passion for it. Going back to that I can look at you and find 10 ways to monetize things you're doing. Duh. Like, of course, I would like marketing and promotion and business growth. And so I went back to school again and started training and studying and learning. And I got a couple more certifications in digital marketing. And I specialize in the veterinary side of it because I speak that language. I want to help businesses in the veterinary space grow and find ways of monetizing themselves. So that way they can create jobs and opportunities for people who are coming up in veterinary medicine. So yeah, total turnaround, completely unexpected. If you would have asked me in 1995, when I got my first job working as a vet assistant, if I would be traveling around at conferences and speaking and teaching people how to market themselves and market their brand and to do all of those things, nope, I would have thought you were smoking crack. There was just no way. Not me. I don't even like public speaking. It scares the crap out of me. But when I'm up there, it's not public speaking. I'm showing people what I know and what I know works and how exciting it is and how much cool things that they can do for themselves.
I was going to say, I've heard you speak and it did not look like you were nervous at all. So if you are, you hide it well.
I always start out nervous. And then in the first 3 minutes, I'm like, oh no, let's talk.
I have that too. It's like there's something about just the starting part that is the scary part for me. And then once you get into it, as long as you're talking about things that you're excited to talk about and you're thinking about what the audience can get out of it, like you said, it's not like a public speech where you're up and you memorize this thing. It's about sharing and connecting. And I like that this kind of comes back, to something that you didn't leave. It was always there, that interest in entrepreneurship and being able to have the ability to take something and think big about how we can make this work. And you get to do that in the veterinary industry, which I am very biased. I love that because this whole podcast is about all the different things that you can do and ways you can contribute in the veterinary industry. And of course, you're a great example of that, but you also get to work with people who are doing that as well. I think you said, I don't know if I'm saying the right words, but you're like, I love the crazy businesses, the weirdo niches that, people are finding.
Yeah.
I think that's so exciting because we're in a time, I think we've always been a world where being able to see a need, fill a need is how we solve problems, we grow, we learn, we get better. So you're kind of there at the forefront of some of these up and coming people who can see a really unique need and provide a very unique solution that works. And on top of that, you're able to help them make a living out of it, which is sometimes the hard part for people in the veterinary industry. I think we're full of problem solvers. Just sometimes we don't always know the steps to make it sustainable. And so we need people like yourself who can help us go through some of those thought processes and steps and have a support system that we can really accomplish this and each individually thrive.
Yeah, my network has been pivotal. I mean, honestly, without having the friends that I had that really pushed me and, the fire under the butt inspiration. And then moving forward, the network of people that I have, like working with Debbie Boone right now and Dr. Jill from Ignite. Like we just formed NAVR, which is the North American Association of Veterinary Receptionists. Like we are still working toward carving a path in veterinary medicine for people who may not see the path for themselves. And we want to support the CSRs who need to have professional level education and professional level credentialing. That way they also have a path in vet med. We've done a lot of work with DVMs. We've done a lot of work with managers. We've done a lot of work with technicians. The assistants have training programs. It's time for the CSRs to come forward. And so we formed that association and launched it in January. In fact, we're going to be announcing it at Fetch coming up in August. And so there's this brand new association for receptionists to go and learn and be professional. And we're working to get a credential ready for them, the certified client experience professional credential. It's coming. So there are so many paths in veterinary medicine that it's thinking that you either have to be a doctor, a technician, an assistant, a practice manager, or a receptionist, or a kennel attendant. And those are the 5 things you get to do, 6 things. No, that's not true. I mean, all my clients are weirdos and I absolutely love it. I have veterinary consultants. I have veterinarians who are now career coaches who are taking a step back from practicing and now they're working with other veterinarians, career coaching them through what they've experienced. I have relief technicians that own businesses that have relief technicians. I work with another technician who is a hospice care provider. There's just so many weird, non-traditional. And that's what, weird is a term of affection for me. Non-traditional, not expected. And they're working and they're creating a space for themselves and they're creating a job for themselves and others. And that's what I love is they're carving new paths. And so I just want to help, even if I'm just the person standing beside you, holding your hand, rooting you on, then that's what I want to do. I love it.
Yes. And if you want to speak a little bit more to that program or the opportunities that you see, because I think that is such a crucial role in the hospital. They're one of the first people that clients see. So do you want to speak a little bit more to some of the things, maybe some needs that you see and some possible solutions? Yes, the certification program, but anything around there that you want to encourage people or maybe who are thinking about this type of career path, who may be wanting to support other people in this career path, what would you say to them?
We have a website. We've been working on building this website out. Like I said, it's the three of us. We've been working really hard to get everything launched and ready. We are a nonprofit, so we've got everything formalized. So it's NAVR, NAAVR.org. There's a wait list to join, and we literally have people already waiting on the list to join as members. My biggest request is for practice managers and practice owners to pour into your teams, pour in education and opportunity, and give them CE. Give every single team member a CE allowance, whether they have a credential or not. Because every bit of education that you allow them to get and you encourage them to get, they're going to pour it back into your practice. Why wouldn't you do that? Like it doesn't make sense to me to not provide that foundation and that framework. Like my practice owners, they bought me the library and made studying easy and didn't make those expensive books a barrier to my education because they knew that my education was going to benefit them in the long run. Why wouldn't you invest in that way? And so that's my work and my effort and my time and Debbie Boone's and Dr. Jill Clark, all of our time and energy and effort and our money, because we've had to front this thing, is going into that because we know it's going to go back into the practice. So it's a no-brainer. So help us do that. Help us support it. Help allow your teams to get that training and that CE. Fetch is offering the very first CSR track ever. We have a dedicated track for CSRs now, and they're the first ones that are going to be doing it. And it's coming to Kansas City at this coming up Fetch. So we have 4 hours of just CSR CE. That's tremendous. And the idea is that it'll grow. We'll get more people there. They've even given us a discount for our CSRs. So if they go to our Facebook page, North American Association of Veterinary Receptionists, NAVR is what we call it. The horrible abbreviation, but it works. You can find the discount code to be able to go. And I think the first 50 or 100 people that sign up are free. It's incredible what Fetch is doing to support NAVR.
That's amazing. And, you were talking about this as well. Not only does it all come back to the practice, the more that we can build individuals up. And what I'm also hoping to do, and I see that it helps, is as you pour in individuals, that pours into practices, it also builds into making the entire profession a better place to be. And so hearing things like this is really exciting. We're pouring back into our teams. I think it increases better culture and teamwork and relationships. And there's so many things that are bigger ripples that can come from this. So yes, you have to start stepwise and encouraging those steps, but realizing this can have such a huge impact and hopefully that encourages people. So I want to thank you so much for your work, and Debbie and Jill have both been on the podcast as well. It's a great group. Very excited to continue to watch and support you any way I can. So I always like to at least ask this one, and that is, what is something you are most grateful for?
Lived experience, because we learned so much from it. I'm grateful for so many things, so many different times, but in this moment, just having all that lived experience, because it's helping me, but hopefully it can help someone who's at a crossroads or can't see a path. and doesn't realize there is one, or doesn't realize that they can make their own, that's lived experience. I didn't know, and I did it. So if I can, I'm not super special and I'm not super smart, but if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I want to encourage them to do that.
I hope you enjoyed this fascinating veterinary story. We can make an impact in so many places. Check out the show notes for lots of resources. Please make sure you are subscribed on your podcast app, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and follow me on LinkedIn, where I hang out the most. You can contact me on LinkedIn, on the website at vetlifereimagined.com, and brand new is that you can text me. To send me a text message, find the link at the top of the show notes below that says, send us a text message. I want to thank our longtime sponsors, Fire Consulting and Will Hughes, who support the podcast over on our hosting platform, Buzzsprout. You can support the podcast too. Just check out the show notes for a link. And I hope to see you next time on Vet Life Reimagined.